So we need leadership that is responsive to those global needs, but is able to adapt them to local situations, to those local realities. People who are comfortable operating across diverse cultures, particularly the more multinational organizations, but increasingly with the power of the internet and with other ways of reaching, there isn't a company in the world really that doesn't need to embrace that sort of cultural diversity. So you need to be able to build relationships with multi-stakeholders in ways which companies have never perhaps had to do before as they operate more on this international and this more global scale. And they need to inspire and to drive innovation in their companies around this agenda. Because, of course, those companies that can provide the solutions that the world is looking for are the ones which are going to be more successful. And they need to be able to manage inner complexity within the challenges that they have within running their businesses, but also within this widespread market complexity. So we've got to get out of those silos, as I was drawing on the board earlier, and become more expansive, and to start to drive for a new way of doing business. Now, Matt, is he here yet? No, Matthew Gitson, he isn't. But this is, he'll probably show something very similar, so I'm not going to take long over this. But this came from some research between LvBS and Ashridge. And what it's saying is, from interviewing many CEOs who are members of the Global Compact, that the qualities of leadership that were traditional, if you like, within business on the left-hand side are no longer enough, and that the qualities on the right-hand side are the ones which really speak to my last slide. So it's not just about knowing the technology, it's being able to manage people. It's not just being bright and intelligent, but it's having the emotional intelligence to relate to people in a way and to drive them and to motivate them, to inspire them, to instill values into the way they do, and to be able to transcend cultures and perspectives. And instead of driving just the process, it's to be an innovation champion within this space that I'm talking about. And it's more to be a non-linear thinker, to work in complexity in system solutions rather than thinking we can just do it A to B all the time. And to be, as I say, effective cross-culturally. So we can study that list, but I actually think that these are now the sorts of qualities of leadership which are going to be most useful for companies. And indeed, I would say for governments and policymakers, it isn't just companies, and indeed for NGOs, because I think we've got to have an aligned sense of what leadership is about if we're going to meet some of the challenges that we're talking about. Now, these are probably quite familiar to you, or things like it. These are the leadership competencies that were developed by Shell for its leadership development framework. So they're fairly conventional, and I'm sure you'll recognize a lot of these qualities, and you probably teach them here in the business school. So when I was looking at how to drive the things we've been talking about into the leadership development within a multinational company, then this was the baseline, if you like, of what I actually had to work with. And at the same time, though, I wanted to bring in these notions. So what we did was to, for example, under Build Shared Vision, that it's not just about building shared vision within the company, but it's also with the stakeholders that you need to engage with. So if I give you an example, if we were having a new gas-to-power project in the Philippines, it wasn't just developing shared vision with our own engineers and with our own finance people and with the people who are going to build the thing, but it was actually building shared vision with the stakeholders who would have a vested interest in this development. The government, the local communities, the international NGO groups, the environmental and the social people, to understand what was a shared vision around what was the win-win situation around these sorts of projects. So it's to help people think further outside and to work with stakeholders and to motivate and coach and develop them in ways which will develop their capacity, not just the capacity of the people within your own organization. And champion customers focus. Well, it used to be just champion customer focus, but we've included it to we've expanded it to include stakeholder focus as well. So you need to develop a deep understanding of stakeholder needs and respond to them in terms of their hopes and fears and expectations. Engage external stakeholders to constructively build new strategic relationships. Companies are going to need to form new partnerships in ways that they've never done before if they're going to be successful in meeting these challenges. And for our own leaders to use insights around what are the external trends that I've been talking about and their relevance to the way that company actually does business. And therefore to satisfy multiple expectations, not just those that are internal. And I'm going to whiz through some of these because I think by now you're getting the idea that under each of the competency headings, what we did was to take the sustainability lens and apply it to the competency frameworks and see how could it be expanded to actually suit this wider need of working within systems and managing complexity and across diverse cultures and stakeholder groups. So maximizes business opportunities, for example, draws upon those external trends and society's expectations, recognizes the importance of intangibles, integrates economic, environmental and social considerations, and balances short-term priorities with longer-term needs. These are the things which are consistent with getting your business aligned to some of the things which are important. Personal effectiveness. So it's go and seek advice where you might not have sought it before. Don't just think that the solution can be generated from within the company. Many of the answers need to come from outside of the company. So if you're going to develop your personal effectiveness, then you need to learn from whatever source you can, not just from within the more traditional boundaries. And values differences. This is almost where we started this morning, or this afternoon. Seek out and utilize diverse inputs. Incorporate cultural diversity, create a culture of diversity and inclusiveness. These are quite new notions for companies, but one of the things that made me most proud about Shell was when I used to look around the dining room at the lunchtime. It was like United Nations. You could see every colour, every background, every experience, every nationality, and it really was like Tower of Babel with all the different languages going on just across the dining room just on an ordinary day. And I think that is showing the value of diversity and how far you can take